I'm Amit Saxena. I'm a senior environmental advisor and a subject matter expert in wildlife and biodiversity here at TC Energy. As an energy company, we have lots of requirements and lots of responsibilities to manage our impacts on the environment, and that includes on wildlife and biodiversity. So my role here is to manage all of our project impacts on biodiversity and make sure that we put the land back the way it was before we started our projects, and also to learn a little bit about wildlife and biodiversity in the natural environment in which we operate. It's largely based out of our Calgary headquarters here, and I deal with provincial and federal regulators and government agencies, as well as managing a lot of consultants who are doing a lot of field work. I was a kid interested in animals, for sure, and a lot of support from my family to do what I wanted to do. And I started out in vet school, actually, and I thought that's where I was going to go. And I did a first year of vet school and then realized, hey, I could work with wildlife, actually, and be out in nature. And it was a better environment for me rather than dealing with animals in cages at a vet clinic. So I switched to wildlife biology and never looked back. I have lots of cool experiences. I've been able to travel the world in my role. I'd like to spend more time out in the field, but I think it's the natural progression of a career as you go through. You start out as a field grunt, spending most of your time out in the bush, and then less and less, and starting to do more project management and budget management, etc. I know, talking to my kids, they ask a lot of questions about my work and the things that I'm working on. You know, it's very nice to be able to share that with them, but then also to be home and dealing with the things that they're dealing with as a family and as kids. That's a really important part of being a family, is spending quality time together. We're lucky here in Calgary. We live so close to the mountains. Banff is actually close to my heart as a place also, and we go there as a family almost every weekend when we can. We love it as a family, going on hikes and keeping our head up and learning things and seeing what's around us. The kids are always looking for tracks in the dirt and looking for birds and everything else, so it's a lot of fun. There's my wife, Cal Colwinder, sorry, it's her name. We call her Cal. We have two daughters. Priya is 15 and Sahara is 14. So they're pretty close in age and they fight like cats and dogs, but they also love each other very much. It's awesome. One of the things that's important to me working in the energy sector is making sure that there is a future for my family and my kids and their kids. I want them to have all the opportunities in the world which come from things like energy development and provision of energy infrastructure and clean energy. But at the same time, I want them to also be able to have nature, to have natural spaces, and to be able to go out and explore wildlife and learn things about wildlife. I want them to be able to teach their kids about wildlife. We have these extensive regulatory processes in place here in Canada and in Alberta. And I for one, embrace them. I'm glad we have those regulations, and that's, I think, what puts us at the top of the list for environmental management within our sector in the world. I like the fact that in my role, I can have those discussions with the regulators and try and influence them in a positive way and do something that actually benefits caribou or whatever it is we're dealing with. A lot of the work that we do is around caribou. Caribou are one of the highest profile species at risk, so we have extended requirements to do mitigation planning around caribou. So that means mitigating the way that we operate on the landscape, when we operate on the landscape, so working around some of those timing restrictions for caribou, around calving areas and calving periods during the year, and then actually developing monitoring plans for once we're done and now we're in operation. I've done study designs and recovery plans for caribou where you say, this is all the things, these are all the levers we need to pull. It's amazing how many different factors come into play to try and affect caribou populations at the end, as the end goal. Caribou recovery is a multi-lever operation, and that's one of the things that I'm working on, is trying to work with the regulators, with the government agencies, and with Indigenous communities. That's where I hope to sort of finish my career on, is on that collaboration piece, working with all these different agencies and pulling all the different levers and the right levers to the right extent to make a difference for caribou. I think that's a really big part of the future is collaborating, because it's really hard to do things in silos now. The world is getting smaller and smaller, and there's a real need to work with Indigenous people on the landscape, with other stakeholders who have an interest in the resources. That's, I think, a very important part, actually making the environment a better place after we leave than it was before we found it. To anyone looking for a career in the energy sector, I would say there's almost always a role for you, no matter what your area of expertise is. And all you have to do is find that niche, and you can make a living doing it, for sure. So there's all kinds of different ways that you could have a fruitful job, chase a passion, and make a difference.